The stars above Earth had always been beautiful. For thousands of years, humans had looked up at them with wonder and hope. They had dreamed of meeting other beings out there in the endless darkness. They had imagined friendly aliens who would share knowledge and help humanity grow. But on this cold morning in November, those dreams turned into a nightmare. 3,000 alien warships appeared in the sky without any warning. They came out of something the scientists would later call fold space, a way of traveling faster than light that humans had only begun to understand. The ships were massive, each one the size of a small city, and they blocked out the stars like a curtain of death being drawn across the heavens. The people of Earth looked up and felt true fear for the first time in generations. In cities across the world, millions stopped what they were doing and stared at the sky. Car horns fell silent. Streets emptied. Children asked their parents what was happening, and for once, the parents had no answers to give. The alien fleet belonged to a species called the Vecthory. They were conquerors. They had traveled across the galaxy for centuries, taking world after world, species after species. 11 civilizations had already fallen to them, and not one had lasted more than a few hours after first contact. The Vecthory had perfected the art of breaking the will of their enemies before any real fighting could begin. High Admiral Zyrax stood on a bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 small eyes that never seemed to blink. He looked down at the blue and green planet below him with complete confidence. He had done this many times before. He knew exactly how it would go. First, fear. Then panic. Then desperate attempts to negotiate. And finally, surrender. It was always the same. These humans would be no different from the others. In a secret underground facility beneath the mountains of Colorado, the United Terran Defense Council gathered for an emergency meeting. The room was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Generals in crisp uniforms shouted orders into their phones. Politicians argued about what message to send to the aliens. Scientists stared at data screens, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The noise was deafening. Everyone was talking at once, and no one was listening to anyone else. Fear had taken hold of even these powerful leaders, and it showed in their raised voices and trembling hands. But at the far end of the long table, one man sat perfectly still. His name was Commander Daniel Cole. He was 53 years old, with short gray hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face showed no emotion at all. While everyone around him panicked, he simply sat there, his hands folded on the table. In front of him, watching the holographic display that showed the alien fleet hanging above their world. Lieutenant Maria Vance stood behind him. She had been his aide for 9 years, and she knew him better than almost anyone. She had seen him in the worst situations imaginable. She had been with him at the Battle of Titan Station, when their fleet was outnumbered 5-1, and everyone thought they were going to die. She had watched him stay calm when missiles were exploding all around them and good soldiers were dying by the hundreds. She had never seen him look quite like this. It was not fear. She knew that much. Daniel Cole did not feel fear the way other people did. He had told her once that fear was just information, a signal that something needed attention. The trick was to listen to the signal without letting it control you. No. This was something else. This was the look he got when his mind was working on a problem so big that he needed every bit of his attention focused on it. His eyes were distant, seeing something that no one else could see. General Patricia Hayes slammed her hand on the table. She was a large woman with a fierce reputation, and right now she was angrier than Maria had ever seen her. "We need to respond," the general shouted. "Every minute we waste gives them more time to prepare. We need to show them that we are not afraid." "What exactly would you suggest?" asked Secretary Morrison, a thin man with nervous eyes. We have no idea what their weapons can do. Our intelligence is almost non-existent. If we provoke them, they might destroy us all in minutes. So we just sit here and wait to die? General Hayes demanded. The argument continued, growing louder and more desperate with each passing moment. But Commander Cole did not join in. He simply watched the holographic display, studying the formation of the alien fleet, the positioning of their largest ships, the patterns in their movement. Maria leaned down and spoke quietly in his ear. Sir, they are waiting for you to say something. You are the one who built our deep space defense network. You know more about our capabilities than anyone else in this room. Cole did not respond. His eyes remained fixed on the display. On the screen, the alien flagship moved slightly, positioning itself at the center of the formation. It was a gesture of supreme confidence, putting their command ship in the most visible position. They wanted Earth to see it. They wanted Earth to understand that they had nothing to fear from these primitive humans. Maria waited. She had learned long ago that pushing Commander Cole never worked. He would speak when he was ready, and not a moment before. The minutes stretched on. The arguments around the table grew more frantic. Some leaders were already talking about surrender, about trying to negotiate the best possible terms. Others wanted to launch everything they had at the alien fleet, even though they knew it would probably be useless. And still, Daniel Cole said nothing. Finally, after what felt like hours, he moved. It was a small motion, just a slight straightening of his shoulders, but Maria noticed it immediately. Something had changed. He had made a decision. He stood up. Slowly, and one by one, the voices around the table fell silent. All eyes turned to him. In that moment, he was the most important person on Earth, and everyone in the room knew it. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, I need everyone to stop talking and listen very carefully. What I am about to tell you will determine whether humanity lives or dies. We are about to do something that no species has ever done when facing the victory. He paused, and in the silence, Maria could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. We are going to do absolutely nothing. The room erupted in confusion, but Daniel Cole was already walking toward the door. He had work to do and very little time to do it. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he had no intention of letting his species down. Behind him, Maria hurried to catch up, her mind racing with questions she knew he would not answer. Not yet, not until he was ready. That was just how Daniel Cole worked. And somehow, against all logic, she trusted him completely. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Zyrax waited for the flood of human transmissions that always came after his demands. He had done this 11 times before, and it always played out the same way. First came the desperate pleas for mercy. Then came the offers of tribute and resources. Sometimes there were empty threats, brave words from leaders who knew they had already lost. And finally, always finally, came the surrender. He sat on his command throne, a massive chair carved from the bones of creatures long extinct, and watched his communication officers work. They monitored every frequency the humans used, ready to record and analyze every transmission. The hours passed. The screens remained empty. Commander Thrall was the first to approach with concerns. He was younger than Zyrax, his gray skin still smooth and his 4 eyes still bright with ambition. But there was uncertainty in his voice when he spoke. High Admiral, our analysts are confused. The humans have not responded to your message. Not a single transmission. It is as if they have simply stopped communicating entirely. Zyrax waved a dismissive claw. They are frozen with fear. It happens sometimes with the weaker species. They are so terrified that they cannot even find the words to beg for their lives. Perhaps, Thrall said carefully, But our psychological profiles of humans suggest otherwise. They are a reactive species, highly emotional, prone to panic and hasty action. They should be flooding us with communications by now. The silence is unexpected. Unexpected does not mean concerning, Zyrex replied. They will break eventually. They all do. But as more hours passed, the silence continued. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a strange tension began to spread through the Vectory fleet. It started with whispers among the crew. In the mess halls and sleeping quarters, soldiers who had never questioned their superiority began to ask quiet questions. Why had the humans not responded? What were they planning? What did they know that the Vectory did not? The intelligence officers were the first to officially raise concerns. They had been studying human culture and history ever since the fleet entered this solar system, and what they found disturbed them in ways they could not fully explain. High Admiral, the chief intelligence officer, reported, "We have completed our analysis of human historical records. The findings are troubling." Zyrax leaned forward on his throne. "Explain." "Humans are not like the other species we have conquered. The others were peaceful civilizations that had evolved beyond internal conflict. They had no experience with war, which is why they fell so quickly to our forces." The officer paused, his four eyes blinking nervously. "Humans are different. They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence as a species. They have fought countless conflicts, killed billions of their own kind, and developed weapons of terrible destruction. Their history is written in blood." Zyrax considered this. "Many species have violent pasts. It does not change anything." "With respect, High Admiral, there is more. Humans do not surrender the way other species do. In their history, there are countless examples of soldiers who chose death rather than submission. They have a concept they call fighting to the last man. It means exactly what it sounds like. They would rather die than accept defeat." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Zyrax silenced them with a glare, but he could not silence his own thoughts. "Additionally," the officer continued, "we have analyzed their military technology. It appears more primitive than our own, but there are gaps in our intelligence. Large sections of their defense network are completely hidden from our sensors. We do not know what they are hiding." "Hiding? What could they possibly hide that would matter against our fleet?" The officer hesitated. "We do not know, High Admiral. That is precisely the problem." Zyrax stood and walked to the main viewing window. Earth hung below, beautiful and blue and utterly silent. For the first time, he truly looked at it, not as a prize to be claimed, but as a mystery to be solved. What were the humans doing? What were they thinking? He had conquered 11 worlds, and not once had he faced an enemy he could not understand. The silence from Earth was like a blank wall, revealing nothing, hiding everything. And in that emptiness, his imagination began to work against him. The hours continued to pass. 12 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours. Still nothing. Crew morale began to slip. Soldiers who had been eager for conquest now moved through the ship with nervous energy. They jumped at shadows. They spoke in hushed tones. They watched the silent planet below and wondered what horrors it might contain. Sub-Commander Threll returned to Zyrax's side. "High Admiral, we have received reports from several ships. The crews are becoming restless. Some are even speaking of bad omens." "Bad omens?" Zyrax laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "We are the Vectory Dominion. We do not believe in omens." "Of course not," Thrall agreed. "But the silence is affecting morale. The soldiers are trained to face enemies who fight back. They know how to handle resistance. This is something they have never experienced. An enemy who does nothing. Who says nothing. Who simply waits." Zyrax thought of the human commander who must be down there somewhere, making decisions that would determine the fate of his entire species. What kind of being could remain silent in the face of certain destruction? What kind of mind could resist the overwhelming urge to respond, to beg, to threaten, to do something? It was either supreme foolishness or supreme confidence. And Zyrax was beginning to suspect it was not foolishness. "Double the sensor sweeps," he ordered. "I want to know everything about their hidden installations, their secret weapons, whatever they are planning." "It will be done, High Admiral." As Thrall left to carry out the order, Zyrax remained at the window. The blue planet stared back at him, keeping its secrets close. For the first time in his long career, the High Admiral felt a small seed of doubt take root in his mind. He had never lost a conquest. He had never even come close. But something about this world, about these silent humans, made him feel like he was walking into a trap he could not see. He pushed the feeling aside. It was ridiculous. They were humans, a young species with limited technology and no experience in interstellar warfare. They were nothing compared to the might of the Vectory Dominion. And yet, as the 20-hour mark approached, Zyrax found himself unable to look away from Earth. The silence pressed against him like a physical weight, and somewhere deep in his ancient warrior's heart, something that might have been fear began to stir. He had demanded their surrender in 24 hours. Only 4 hours remained. And still, the humans said nothing at all. The alien message came at exactly 6 in the morning, Greenwich Mean Time. Every screen on Earth, from the smallest phone to the largest billboard, suddenly went dark. Then the face of High Admiral Zyrax appeared, and humanity got its first clear look at its would-be conquerors. The Vectory leader was terrifying to behold. His gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones, and his 4 eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. When he spoke, his voice was translated instantly into every human language. A demonstration of technology that made Earth's best computers look like toys. "People of Earth," Zyrax said, "you have witnessed our arrival. Your weapons are primitive. Your defenses are laughable. Your species is young and weak. You will surrender your world, your resources, and your population for integration into the Vectory Dominion." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have one standard rotation of your planet to comply. That is approximately 24 of your hours. If you do not surrender completely and unconditionally by that time, we will begin the systematic destruction of your civilization. Resistance will result in extinction. This is not a threat. It is simply a fact." The transmission ended, and chaos erupted across the globe. In every nation, people flooded the streets. Some prayed. Some screamed. Some tried to find places to hide, though there was nowhere on Earth that could protect them from the fleet above. World leaders called emergency sessions. Military commanders activated every weapon system they had. Scientists worked desperately to find any weakness in the alien technology. And through it all, the people demanded an answer. They demanded that someone speak for them, that someone tell the aliens humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. The pressure fell on Commander Daniel Cole. He had left the underground bunker and traveled to the main orbital defense station, a massive structure floating high above Earth's atmosphere. From here, he could see the alien fleet with his own eyes, a vast swarm of metal and death hanging in the void. Captain Ryan Hughes approached him nervously. Hughes was in charge of communications for the entire Terran defense network, and he had never felt so out of his depth. He was a young man, only 32, and he had trained his whole life for a moment like this. But nothing could have prepared him for the reality of facing an alien invasion. "Commander," Hughes said, "the world is waiting. Every nation has asked us to respond to the Vectory. They need to know what we are going to say." Cole stood at the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back. The alien flagship was visible even from this distance, a dark shape against the stars. He studied it for a long moment before answering. Nothing. Hughes blinked. Sir, we tell them nothing. We transmit nothing. I want a complete communications blackout. Every ship, every station, every ground installation. Not a single signal leaves this solar system. Commander, with all respect, the Vectri expect a response. Every species they have conquered has responded immediately. If we stay silent, they might think we are defying them. They might attack before our time runs out. Cole turned from the window. For just a moment, Hughes thought he saw the ghost of a smile on the commander's weathered face. Captain, let me ask you something. In your experience, what is the most frightening thing about any enemy? Hughes thought about it. Their weapons? Their numbers? No, Cole said quietly. The most frightening thing about any enemy is not knowing what they are thinking, not knowing what they are planning. The Vectri have conquered 11 species, and every single one of them reacted exactly the way the Vectri expected. They begged, they threatened, they negotiated, and then they surrendered. He stepped closer to Hughes, and his gray eyes were intense. We are going to do something different. We are going to give them silence. We are going to let them stare into the darkness and see nothing staring back. And in that silence, their own fears will grow. Their own doubts will multiply. They will start to wonder what we know that they do not. They will start to imagine the worst. Hughes swallowed hard. And what do we actually know, sir? Cole's smile faded. That, Captain, is something I will share when the time is right. For now, I need you to trust me. I need everyone to trust me. Can you do that? It was not really a question. Hughes nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Good. Now give the order. Complete blackout. Not a whisper. The order went out within minutes. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, every human transmission stopped. Radio stations went silent. Television channels showed only static. Military channels that had been buzzing with frantic activity suddenly fell quiet, for the first time in over a century. Humanity stopped talking. Lieutenant Maria Vance found Cole in his private quarters an hour later. He was sitting alone in the darkness, staring at a small photograph in his hands. She could not see who was in the picture, but she could guess. He rarely spoke about his family, but she knew he had lost them years ago, in the early days of the colonial wars. Sir, she said softly, the blackout is in effect, but the other commanders are worried. They want to know what happens next. Cole put the photograph away and looked up at her. What happens next is we wait. We let the silence do its work, and what are we waiting for? He stood and walked to the small window in his quarters. Earth hung below them, beautiful and fragile, a pale blue dot in the infinite darkness. We are waiting for them to become afraid, he said. We are waiting for them to realize that they have never faced anything like us before. The Vectri are conquerors, Maria. They are very good at what they do. But they have one weakness that they do not even know about. What weakness? Cole turned to face her, and there was something ancient in his eyes. Something hard and unyielding that she had never seen before. They have never lost. They have never faced a species that refused to play their game. They have conquered 11 worlds, but they have never truly fought a war. And that, Lieutenant, is going to be their downfall. Maria wanted to ask more questions, but she could see that he was done talking. He had shared more with her in the last few minutes than he usually did in months. Whatever plan was forming in his mind, he would reveal it only when he was ready. She left him alone with his thoughts, and as she walked down the corridor, she realized something strange. Despite everything, despite the alien fleet hanging above their world and the deadline ticking away, she was not afraid. Daniel Cole had that effect on people. When he believed something was possible, you believed it too. And right now, he believed humanity was going to survive. That was enough for her. It had to be. 22 hours had passed since the Vectory ultimatum. In 2 more hours, the deadline would expire, and the alien fleet would begin its attack. Across Earth, billions of people held their breath and waited for the end. But in the orbital defense station, high above the planet, Commander Daniel Cole finally moved. He had spent the last 22 hours in near total silence, speaking only when absolutely necessary, giving orders that seemed to make no sense. His officers had followed those orders without question, because that was what they had been trained to do. But now, as the commander walked toward the central communications array, they could sense that something was about to change. Lieutenant Maria Vance walked beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had trusted Cole through countless battles, but this was different. This was everything. If he was wrong, humanity would cease to exist. Captain Ryan Hughes met them at the communications console. His hands were trembling slightly, though he tried to hide it. "Commander, the blackout is still in effect. All channels are silent. What are your orders?" Cole looked at the console for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies. Wide broadcast. I want them to hear every word." Hughes worked the controls with practice speed. "Channel open, sir. You are transmitting to the entire Vectory fleet." Cole stepped forward. The holographic camera activated, and his image began streaming across space toward 3,000 alien warships. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, carrying no trace of fear or desperation. "I, Admiral Zyrax. I am Commander Daniel Cole. I speak for Earth." He paused, letting the words reach every screen on every ship. "You have given us 24 hours to surrender our world. We have spent 22 of those hours in silence. I imagine you have been wondering why." Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Zyrax leaned forward on his throne. His 4 eyes were fixed on the human's face, searching for any sign of weakness. "We were silent," Cole continued, "because we needed to discuss whether your fleet was even worth addressing. You see, this is not the first time we have faced a threat from the stars. 17 years ago, our long-range sensors detected your expansion into what we call the Outer Rim. We tracked your conquests. We studied your methods. We analyzed your technology." He took a single step forward, and his gray eyes seemed to look directly into the souls of every Vectory watching. "We've been preparing for this moment for 17 years. Cole gestured, and behind him, a massive holographic display came to life. It showed detailed schematics of Vectory warships, their weapon systems, their shield generators, their engine configurations. Every secret the Vectory thought they had kept was laid bare. Your shield frequency modulation, your primary weapon charging cycles, your fleet formation patterns. We know all of it. We have developed specific countermeasures for all of it." On the Eternal Dominion, Sub-Commander Thrall turned pale. "High Admiral, those are classified specifications. How could they possibly have obtained this information?" Zyrax did not answer. He could not look away from the human commander's face. The holographic display behind Cole shifted again. This time, it showed a tactical map of the solar system. Red signatures began appearing everywhere, emerging from behind Earth's moon, from within the asteroid belt, from positions deep in the outer planets that the Vectory had dismissed as empty and unimportant. "You brought 3,000 ships to our solar system," Cole said. "An impressive number. But while you were waiting for us to beg for mercy, we were moving our own fleet into position." The red signatures kept appearing. 400, 800, 2,000, 3,000. The number kept climbing. "We have 4,200 warships waiting for you. Every one of them has been designed specifically to fight your fleet. Every captain has trained for years to face Vectory tactics. Every weapon has been calibrated to penetrate your defenses. Cole's voice remained calm, but there was something beneath it now. Something cold and hard as steel. But numbers are not why you should be afraid. He stepped closer to the camera. You should be afraid because we have been silent for 22 hours. And in that time, not one human voice called for surrender. Not one. Out of 8 billion people on our world, not a single one begged for mercy. Not a single one asked us to give up. Cole's eyes burned with quiet intensity. You have conquered 11 species, High Admiral. All of them surrendered quickly because they did not know how to fight. They had evolved past violence. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle for survival. He shook his head slowly. We have not forgotten. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have waged wars that killed hundreds of millions. We have built weapons that could destroy our own planet. And through it all, through every war and every tragedy, we have never stopped fighting. We do not know how to surrender. It is simply not part of who we are. The holographic display changed one final time, showing the vast network of human ships now surrounding the Vectory fleet from every angle. If you begin this war, Cole said, we will end it. And we will not stop there. We will follow you home. We will find every world you have conquered, and we will free them. We will dismantle your dominion system by system, planet by planet, until the name Vectory is remembered. Only as a warning to others who might think of threatening our kind. He straightened his shoulders and clasped his hands behind his back. You have 1 hour to withdraw from our solar system. This is not a negotiation. This is not an offer. This is your only warning. If your fleet is still here when that hour ends, we will attack. And we will not stop until every last one of your ships is dust. Cole let the silence hang for a moment. Choose wisely, High Admiral. The universe is watching. The transmission ended in the orbital station. The command crew stared at their leader in stunned silence. Lieutenant Vance was the first to speak. Sir, she whispered, do we actually have 4,000 ships? Cole turned to look at her, and for the first time in 22 hours, he allowed himself a small smile. We have about 3,000. The other signatures are decoys and sensor ghosts. But they do not know that. And if they call our bluff? The smile faded from Cole's face. Then we fight with what we have. And we make them pay for every inch of space they try to take from us. He turned back to the window, watching the alien fleet hang motionless in the void. But I do not think they will call our bluff. I saw something in Zyrax's eyes during that transmission. Something he has probably never felt before. What? Cole's gray eyes reflected the distant stars. Doubt. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion had fallen completely silent. Every officer, every soldier, every crew member stared at their screens in disbelief. The tactical display showed what should have been impossible. The humans had surrounded them. High Admiral Zyrax sat frozen on his throne, his 4 eyes fixed on the countless red signatures that now filled the space around his fleet. For a long moment, he could not speak. He could not even think. Sub-Commander Throw broke the silence first. High Admiral, our sensors are having difficulty distinguishing between real ships and electronic decoys. The humans appear to have sophisticated jamming technology that we did not anticipate. How many of those signatures are real? Zyrax demanded. Thrall consulted his datapad with trembling claws. We cannot determine with certainty. Our best estimate is between 3,000 and 5,000 combat vessels. But the sensor interference makes precise counts impossible. 3,000 ships. 5,000 ships. The numbers ran through Zyrax's mind like poison. Even at the lower estimate, the humans had matched his fleet. At the higher estimate, they surpassed it significantly. But it was not the numbers that truly frightened him. It was everything else that he thought about the silence. 22 hours of absolute quiet from a species facing extinction. Not a single plea for mercy. Not a single attempt at negotiation. Just cold, patient waiting while they moved their fleet into position around him. He thought about the human commander's eyes. Gray and hard, like the metal of a blade. There had been no fear in those eyes. No desperation. Only certainty. The man had spoken of following the Vecthory home, of dismantling their entire dominion, and he had said it like he was discussing the weather. And he thought about what the intelligence officers had told him. A species that had waged war on itself for 10,000 years. A species that had invented weapons capable of destroying their own world. A species that had a concept called fighting to the last man. What would happen if he attacked? Even if he won, even if he destroyed their fleet and conquered their planet, how many of his ships would he lose? How many soldiers would die? And what would happen when the humans on the surface refused to surrender? How long would he have to fight to subdue a species that simply did not know how to give up? "Aye, Admiral," one of his officers spoke up nervously. "The deadline expires in 47 minutes. What are your orders?" Zyrax stared at the blue planet on his screen. It looked so peaceful from up here. So harmless. But he knew now that looks could be deceiving. Behind that peaceful surface was a species of warriors, quiet and patient, waiting for him to make the wrong move. He had never retreated from a conquest. In his entire career, spanning more than a century, he had never turned away from a target. The very idea went against everything the Vecthory Dominion stood for. But he had also never faced anything like this. "Open a channel," he said quietly. To the human commander. The connection was established within seconds. Commander Daniel Cole's face appeared on the main screen, calm and composed, exactly as it had been before. "Hi, Admiral," Cole said. "I hope you have made your decision." Zyrax forced himself to speak. The words felt like broken glass in his throat. "Commander Cole, the Vecthory Dominion acknowledges your military position. We will withdraw our fleet from your solar system." There was no celebration on Cole's face. No triumph. He simply nodded once, as if he had expected nothing less. "A wise decision, High Admiral. You have 45 minutes remaining. I suggest you use them efficiently." "Before we go," Zyrax said, and he could not keep a note of frustration from his voice, "I must ask you something. Your silence. The way you handled this entire situation. Was it a strategy, or were you truly unafraid?" Cole considered the question for a moment. "High Admiral, 22 hours ago, I sat in a room full of the most powerful people on my planet. They were all terrified. They all wanted to respond to your demands, to beg, to negotiate, to do something. But I knew that the moment we showed fear, we had already lost." He stepped slightly closer to the camera. "So yes, it was a strategy. But it was also something more. You see, humans are afraid of many things. We are afraid of death, of pain, of loss. But there is something we fear even more than any of those things. And what is that? We fear living without freedom. We fear bowing to tyrants. We fear surrendering everything that makes us who we are, just to survive a little longer." Cole's gray eyes seemed to look directly into Zyrax's soul. "Your dominion offers conquered species a choice between death and submission. But for humans, submission is a kind of death. So really, you were offering us no choice at all. And when you offer a human no choice, they will fight you until their last breath." Zyrax absorbed these words in silence. He had conquered 11 species, and not one of them had ever spoken to him like this. Not one of them had ever looked at him with such complete and utter lack of fear. "I understand," he said finally. "We will withdraw, and we will not return." "That would be wise," Cole agreed. "Safe travels, High Admiral." The transmission ended, Xyrax gave the order, and the great Vectory fleet began to move. 3,000 warships turned away from Earth, their engines igniting with blue fire as they prepared to enter Fold-Space. As they withdrew, the human fleet remained in position, watching silently. They did not pursue. They did not gloat. They simply waited until the last Vectory ship had disappeared into the void. In the orbital station, Lieutenant Maria Vance stood beside Commander Cole as they watched the enemy fleet vanish. "Sir," she said softly, "we did it. We actually did it." Cole nodded slowly. "We did. Would we really have followed them home if they had attacked?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired, carrying the weight of all the decisions he had made. The Vectory will spend the rest of their existence asking themselves that question. They will look at the stars and wonder what would have happened if they had chosen differently. And that uncertainty will keep them away far better than any fleet we could build. He turned from the window and began walking toward his quarters. "Some victories are won with weapons, Lieutenant. Others are won with words. And some are won simply by making your enemy afraid of what you might do." Maria watched him go, and she understood something she had never fully grasped before. Daniel Cole had not just saved humanity today. He had done something far more important. He had planted a seed of fear in the heart of a galactic empire. The Vectory would never forget the day they came to Earth. They would tell stories about the silent planet, about the human commander who did not beg, about the fleet that appeared from nowhere. And in those stories, humanity would be remembered not as victims, but as something far more dangerous. They would be remembered as the species that taught the conquerors to be afraid. Above Earth, the stars shone bright and peaceful once more. The invasion was over. Humanity had survived, and somewhere out in the darkness, the Vectory were running home, carrying with them a lesson they would never forget. Some prey was not worth hunting. Some silence spoke, louder than any scream, and some species were simply too dangerous to fight.